This is the first one that I've found myself like sitting in the back of, an Uber, like looking stuff up on this and asking it questions just to see its thinking process. Like
That's
that's
exactly
something that I find really fascinating.
it's exactly right. Google had become a backwater for me. The model Gemini, I had completely abandoned it. It just wasn't up to snuff. But for me, it's completely changed. The logic, the reasoning, the chain of thought is what's grabbed me. Hi, I'm Matt Marshall, founder and editor-in-chief of VentureBeat, here with Sam Witteveen, co-founder of Red Dragon and a developer of agents. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks, Matt. Good to be here.
So, Sam, we want to dive into the new Gemini 2.5 Pro model released on Tuesday. It's a very significant model that's leading the benchmarks, one of the best models out there. And we want to talk about the five biggest takeaways for enterprise technical decision makers. So, Sam, the news is out there. It's been out there for a few days, and we don't want to go over all the details. People can absorb those on their own. But give us quickly first take of the highlights of the model.
So I think the highlights are, everyone was a bit surprised that this was like 2.5 after the 2.0 models were only dropping, over the last couple of months. So I think that was, a big surprise. It turns out the reason why it is a 2.5 is because it looks like it's been trained in a new way for their pre-training. This is the first time they've put an actual sort of reasoning model with their pro models. So that's a really kind of big deal. We've also, sort of seeing that clearly it's doing well on benchmarks, stuff like that. The fact that it can sort of use this, native multimodality is really interesting as well. And on top of that, it's really good at coding and people are just finding it to give really good answers. So I think these are all the things that are sort of adding up to what's making it an interesting model.
Right, and you've done your video, you're breaking down the model in detail. We've seen others responding over the last few days. I've had a chance to play around with it. So let's get into the five big takeaways, right? So the first big takeaway, I think we should probably spend some time on this one because this is the one that I personally think is just remarkable, which is the reasoning, the new structured chain of thought, where it's been trained to do this step by step. Obviously, it's extremely strong, well ordered. I actually was playing around with it to analyze your latest video, the Quen 2.5 Omni video, and I asked, okay, analyze this video. I don't even have time to watch it, but what are the takeaways for me in terms of the audience? And it was really strong in terms of walking through the thinker talker elements that you had in the video. But anyway, numbered points that I could see in its processes, bulleted subpoints, extremely strong. So talk through your observations. I think you had a really interesting uh, example that you used, which is you asked the LLM for its the weaknesses and challenges of LLMs, and I thought it showed a great answer.
Yeah, I think that one of the big things about this sort of structured chain of thought that we're seeing, and this is quite different than things like DeepSeek, right? People have been talking about DeepSeek as being amazing, and it's using a very, a different kind of RL. This one looks like it's much more sort of structured and step by step, and I think that creates a lot of trust here. So I think the fact that people can sort of see how the model is thinking and then they can sort of see like, yeah, okay, I would think like that, or like I could see myself, sort of coming to that conclusion as well based on that thinking creates a lot of trust. So yeah, like I one of the things I found that was fascinating about it was literally asking it, hey, what are some prompts that are really hard even for reasoning models? And to give me that answer, it basically dissected where all these LLMs fall down and even the reasoning models fall down. And it had a very good understanding of it, right? Like that was really surprising that it could see that, okay, where models lack nuance, right? So it needed to pay attention to small things, to small facts. And I think just the ability to be able to see that gives you a lot more confidence in the model. And I think this is one of the things that is definitely going to help sort of, people in industry, is that when they can start to see the thinking patterns of this, and they can come to their own conclusion that, yeah, okay, that makes sense, right? Or, that's something that fits with what we would expect someone to be thinking. Then they're going to have more confidence in their model. Then they're more likely to use it. They're more likely to sort of trust some of the outputs. And obviously, it does things like reduce hallucination, all those kind of things as well.
So, Sam, one of the things we're used to talking about is that, seeing this chain of thought. We've seen it with DeepSeek. We've seen OpenAI doing some some very cursory elements of it, brief summaries of it. But what I found very different here is that it's showing almost the full chain of thought, but it's not as scattered and haphazard as DeepSeek. It's very structured and very thorough, and it is amazing. I want to pause here and actually go to one of the examples that you had in your video.
I kind of feel like you should come in here and try your own prompts to see how it's going to go rather than me go through a bunch of standard tests, etc. But this one I thought was really kind of interesting. So if we ask it, give me 10 really hard thinking problems for an LLM. So sure enough, it can go through and give us 10. But what I find fascinating in here, again, that the thoughts and sort of like a lot of the key parts of this is that, again, it's sort of going through this whole process of sort of restating the question or understanding the question, in this case, understanding the goal for this. But then two, it's understood that it needs to identify LLM weaknesses and challenges. And here, sure enough, it is really getting at the sort of core underlying things that are going on with these models and where they actually fail a lot. The whole sorts of things of physical intuition and simulation, right? A lot of questions out there are still doing this. Now, I'm not saying that this model is perfect at all these things, but the fact that it kind of knows where things are going wrong does show that the training data has kind of pushed it in a really nice way to sort of think about these things. We've got things like novel concept synthesis, planning, right? Long range planning and strategy. You've got to think that this model is going to do really well for agents if it can identify what's going on with these things and actually use them. Ethical nuances. So all the sort of trolley problem sort of tricks and stuff like that, you can see that it's kind of geared for this kind of stuff just by doing these things. Metacognition, self-awareness, a variety of these different things. And then it goes on to basically try and brainstorm out some things for this to actually get to my answer. So I think that the key thing here is, like you talk about the structured thing, if we look at those chains of thought, we're actually seeing numbers next to each one of them. And if we go back to the way that DeepSeek was trained, I'm just going to do this really quickly. The way that DeepSeek was trained was what we call verifiable rewards, meaning that it would basically look, if we asked it a math question, did it get to the right answer at the end? And if it got to the right answer, it would say that, well, all this thinking was kind of useful. But the original idea for this kind of, reasoning models was to do step by step, so that you look at, train the models to get good individual steps for doing this. So that's the paper that came out of OpenAI, similar ideas out of Google and stuff like that. So in many ways, DeepSeek was, doing a shortcut, and everyone was surprised that that shortcut did so well. I think this model really shows that, yeah, okay, the shortcut does well, but maybe the original way of doing it probably does better. And I think that's the thing that's kind of fascinating, that it's not thinking, it's like you said, it's not rambling through the thinking. It's actually more very clear, structured, thought patterns that we could even sort of basically take it, and look at it ourselves. And I actually kind of feel like, when I've been using it since I made the original video, is that, wow, this is a great way to get a lesson in critical thinking, right? Ask this model, some stuff, and then look at how it does the critical thinking behind it. And you really think, yeah, okay, this is pretty smart, right? This is really something that I can see myself learning from this.
Absolutely. So, Sam, let's get to the second takeaway, which is that this is possibly state of the art. I think we could maybe even be more emphatic, which is it is state of the art, but we don't know yet. I'm actually put out some calls to some enterprise folks and getting their feedback. They probably haven't had a chance to really thoroughly use this. It is too early. Clearly, we're seeing reactions. We're seeing the benchmarks, right? That it's number one on the LM arena, the chatbot arena, as you say, some of these benchmarks are questionable. It comes down really to kind of vibe testing. But it is leading on these leaderboards, sometimes by a wide margin. It's on coding, it's roughly on par with the leader out there, which is Claude 3.7, maybe a step behind, right? But it's got a lot of other things going for it, right? The context window, million, right? Tokens so that it can handle code, larger code bases, right? But the takeaway here is that it does have an argument of being state of the art, which is a big deal because OpenAI has held that positioning for a long time. What do you think about this?
Look, I think that the challenge now is all of the models are getting so good that splitting which one is better by one particular benchmark, they all choose different benchmarks to show. So clearly they're showing, the LM Arena benchmark. I kind of feel like that is just like a preference kind of thing. It's like, which cow is best at the state fair, right? It's the last cow that you saw kind of thing. And it does seem like that with the models, right? That tends to basically be whatever was the latest model is the one that is at the top there. Now, we should point out, though, as we're recording this, OpenAI have just released an updated 4.0 and it hasn't gotten to the top of LM Arena. It's number two behind the Gemini 2.5. So maybe there is something to that kind of benchmark.
Yeah, yeah. These models have always kind of been released and they hit the top because they happen to be the latest, as you say. It's the last cow they saw in the fair. I think that there's clearly something special that people are seeing here. I think a lot of people have acknowledged that OpenAI's Quibbly Studio like image generator was uh, was pretty amazing and stole the show. Very popular among consumers, obviously a wide swath of developers. But it seems that Pro 2.5 has been underlooked, probably for those reasons. It doesn't immediately grab you with some of that imagery creation ability. But let's go to the third big takeaway, which it is very strong in coding, right? And Google hasn't had this in the past. It is rivaling the best. Claude 3.7, Sonnet 3.7 from Anthropic has enjoyed this leadership mantle in coding. And it has seen, Anthropic is actually betting the whole, it looks like a whole house on some of this, right? In terms of how it's distinguished from the leader Open AI. And so for this model to come through as strong as it is on coding and the context window, I know Anthropic's widening the context window as we speak as well. Um, I'm curious what you're thinking. You actually tried some of this out. You had this Tetris example, Sam. Walk us through it and exporting it to Replit and having this ability to export this thing to actually execute. Tell us a little bit about that.
I did think that was really interesting. So that's in the main consumer Gemini app, right? Using this 2.5 model, I asked it to basically build a Tetris game, and then you could actually they now have it where you can share it directly to Replit to be able to run it. And it worked first time. Nothing, I didn't need to ask it to fix anything. I kind of feel where this may have an edge now, like you mentioned that supposedly Anthropic is increasing their context window size. But if you think about it, the I think it's like all the Harry Potter books or something are under 1 million tokens from memory, right? I but the crazy thing is like the documentation for some of these agent frameworks, some of these web frameworks, all that sort of stuff, that can be up around sort of 7, 800, 900,000 tokens. So when you can basically just take all of those docs, drop it into this thing can then reason over them, based on what you've asked. It can sort of go through and read the actual docs and then use that. That's a killer combination for coding, right? That's exactly what people want. then I don't need to, I can start out with something that perhaps I'm not an expert at this framework, but if I can just give it all the docs for this, suddenly now it can, it can do it. And we've seen things like Cursor, we've talked about that on the show and stuff like that. Generally, what they're trying to do there is just select parts of the docs out. So you've got to think that this model is going to have an advantage when it can put in 1 million tokens. And then my guess, Matt, is that in the not too distant future, we're going to see it be 2 million, 4 million, 5 million. Let's see where things go. But clearly Google in research has done out to 10 million. So the big thing is like, how does those two combinations of really long context plus really good reasoning, that seems like a winning combination.
That's right. Because of its cloud infrastructure, obviously one of the biggest applications that it's supporting is its own search application. Google is flexing its infrastructure strength here, right? At a time when OpenAI is in meltdown mode with its image model, right? Where it had to it just didn't have the GPUs to be able to serve this to the free tier. It's interesting that Google's, is really flexing its infrastructure there, providing that 1 million context window, and others are having a hard time doing that. So let's go to the next big takeaway, right? Number 4, which is the multimodal integration. Very strong, takes images, audio, video as input. You had this great Las Vegas photo example. Tell us what was going through your head. What did you do, and what was your takeaway there?
So I was literally, I'm heading over to Google Cloud next in Vegas in 2 weeks, and so like I was looking around on the map, trying to find out like, okay, where am I staying? Where's the conference? All the normal sort of stuff. And then the thought came into my mind, well, what if I just like screenshotted this map, right? This map's got nothing on it. And I just turned on Google search for the 2.5 model as well. And so I threw in that map, basically asked it, hey, are there any events on the 9th of April here for Google? It was like an agent, right? If you think about it, this was very agentic in the way that it's doing it. It's basically first looking at the map and going, where is this? Now, it was able to look at the airport, it was able to look at some of the places, and it could work out that, yep, okay, this is a Vegas. Then it sort of decided, okay, well, he wants to know about events that Google might be hosting in this location. So okay, let's do a search for Google events in Vegas on the 9th of April. And sure enough, that it was able to take all that back and then work out, he's talking about Google Cloud Next. And then be able to formulate an answer and tell me, like, sure enough, yep, this is starting on the 9th, it's going from the 9th to the 11th, this is the location, and give me a bunch of information. That's like an agent, right? If you think about it, that is exactly the kind of thing that people were using Manus to do. That's the exact kind of thing that people were using some of the OpenAI agents to do. The fact that it's kind of doing this with literally just the model and Google search is kind of amazing, right? This is no agent framework in there. There's no, LangChain or anything telling it what to do. It just decided itself what it needed to do to get the answer that I wanted back.
Fascinating. So Sam, let's get into I think the final takeaway, which is, using it, kicking the tires on it. It just feels really useful, right? So we've gone through a number of the examples. It feels practically really, at least for me at least, I think mainly with the first takeaway, the reasoning, but just the confidence overall in the model. I think it's worth talking about some of the maybe some of the things, maybe the drawbacks that we've seen. I don't know if you ran into any. I did. There was a hallucination point when I was using the advanced Gemini app, where I put in your video on Quen 2.5. As I was saying, I was experimenting with your recent video, and I was asking it for some takeaways, and it hallucinated that model had a 1 million token context window, which came out from nowhere. It actually pulled the wrong video.
I don't think it's actually hooked up to videos yet, right? Like, I'm pretty sure one of the things that's kind of interesting, just to build on what you just said, right, is that this is the first time that Google has released a model where it's gone on AI Studio and into the Gemini app on the same day. So think about that for a second, right? Like the sort of top tier model before on Gemini, for a long time was basically the 1.5 models, even though the 2.0 models were already out on AI Studio. And it seemed to me that like that, they're clearly two different teams, right? Inside Google. I and this my guess is that someone on high basically said, right, this model is a winner. We want it in there on day one. And it went in there, but maybe they haven't hooked it up to YouTube or to the other things yet. And so like that's still, one of the processes going on in there. Like I noticed that the deep research in there is not using this model, right? The Google Deep Research. Whereas I'm pretty confident that this model in Google Deep Research is going to be pretty amazing, right? We should see a nice bump in sort of results, with this. Look, I think, yeah, it's still early days. Don't forget, this is still an experimental model. It's not um, it's not sort of GA and where everyone can use it and stuff like that. It's not in Google Vertex yet. Last time I checked, I've been told it's coming soon. So maybe that in the next few days or next week or something like that, we'll see it there. And I think that's when enterprises will really get to start to use it by just swapping it out with some of the other Gemini models that they've been using, and then see the results out. So yeah, okay, all those things are still to be wired up, to be doing improved or whatever. But it's still pretty amazing. And like the thing I'm finding is this is the first thing, I'll be really honest, that's got me to use Gemini Advanced. Right. Up until now, like I tried Gemini Advanced when I could do it with the Google Maps and stuff like that. And it was kind of cool that, that one sort of thing. And I tried the deep research and it was okay. But this is the first one that I've found myself like sitting in the back of, an Uber, like looking stuff up on this and asking it questions just to see its thinking process. Like
That's
that's
exactly
something that I find really fascinating.
it's exactly right. Google had become a backwater for me. The model Gemini, I had completely abandoned it. It just wasn't up to snuff. But for me, it's completely changed. The logic, the reasoning, the chain of thought is what's grabbed me. That 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 nuance, the challenge to my own structured thinking. I'm an editor in chief, and we're going through articles, and we're making sure that they're relevant for our personas and so on. We do got to kind of keep a lot of things in mind. We can forget, but that structured, um, continual, reminder of, hey, here's how you should approach things, in a structured, logical way. Very powerful. Sam, one thing that we should address when we're getting to usefulness. We've certainly sung the praises here. This is a model that we're both going to be using. It's put Google back in front. But the time to first token, let's talk a little bit about that. So is this going to be creating some latency? There's all this thought. Um, you notice it's not in the API. But it's there obviously in the app right now and in Google AI Studio. We haven't seen the prices yet. There's this latency trade-off. What do you think about that?
So, okay, I was definitely surprised by the blog post where they basically sort of said that all the models were going to become reasoning models. I don't see that being ideal in that, like, for a lot of things, you just want that small, super quick model that can do really basic things. Like if you want to check an article for grammar, it doesn't make sense to use some really long time thinking model, right? If you wanted to give an opinion on the structure of the article and look up some facts or something, yes, then the reasoning model makes sense. But if you want to just check that all the punctuation was correct, that's like where you want this cheap super fast model that can just do it and be done. And so I am kind of surprised if they're going to try and make everything a reasoning model. Like that doesn't make sense to me. I think, like, unless they've worked out how to basically increase the inference where they can still do all this and be just as fast as before and just as cheap as before. And like you said, this is where I one of the biggest things, we just had the Nvidia conference last week or something like that, right? I and one of the things that I feel that people are not getting is that everyone else has to pay the Nvidia tax. Google doesn't have to pay the Nvidia tax, right? They've got their own silicon. They've got their own, TPUs. We know, for example, even their latest Gemma 3 models, they didn't even need to use their TPU 6s, these brand new TPUs that they've got. They ended up just using TPU 4s and 5s to train that. So that shows that, and the fact that this model is coming out literally just a month or two after the previous one for this, shows that they've got the ability to train these models super quick. They've got, they can basically take their learnings, apply them really quickly, and generate a new model in the same time that everyone's having to sit around for sort of months to do this.
Yeah.
Uh, and
So yeah, amazingly quick turnaround. And Google's been the punching bag for being slow, for just not having its act together. So it's just great to see them back in the game. I hope this represents that they are going to continue to be there. It certainly looks like it. As you say, a lot of this is just they're experimenting in Google AI Studio with this experimental version of the model. So I'm sure they can change a few things to address some of these challenges that we've been talking about. But overall, amazing model. Thanks everyone for watching. Like and subscribe for more insights into the latest in AI and tech. For deeper analysis and updates, visit VentureBeat.com and sign up for our newsletters. Stay informed and ahead of the curve.